welcome to Consulting to Win Radio on New Day Talk Radio. I'm here with my partner, Leanne Farmer, and we're welcoming you in today.
Good morning, Ralph. How are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. How are you today?
Excellent, thanks.
And looks like we have our guest calling in. Hold on just a second here. All right. Oh, it looks like she dropped off. So our guest today is going to be Michelle Joy Del Rey, and she's going to be calling in again here shortly.
It's going to be a great show once we get a couple of kinks worked out here.
Yes. So, okay. So we're with Possibilities Unlimited, and this is Consulting to Win Radio. And we're about winning in business, and we define a win as a result that you can be accountable for. Something that you say you want that you achieve. Something that that you're committed to creating in your business. We call that a win. And we coach people in creating wins in their business. So we're about causing that to happen. And
then one of the reasons we're here on the radio is for our listeners to be able to experience what that is like to work with a coach.
Correct. Yes.
And we spend time with you every week going over a variety of challenges that we think are applicable to just about any kind of business, whether it's sales, prospecting, hiring employees, and we're always interested to know what your challenges are in your business. You can always reach us here at 310-715-6709 if you want to call in during the show. We are going to have Michelle Joy calling in. And Ralph, can you tell our listeners a little bit about Michelle Joy and what she's going to be talking about today?
Yes. So Michelle Joy is a business coach. I worked with her for about 12 years. We worked on numerous projects together. We've done a lot of different variety of business consulting, relationship projects that we've worked on. She's an ontological coach.
Wow, what is that?
We'll let her.
We'll let her explain.
We'll let her give you the explanation on that.
Great.
But she's actually it's an ontological leadership coach. She's a seminar leader. She's a trainer. She's an intuitive. She's an author, and she's a speaker. And if we can get the phone to cooperate here with us, we'll have her on the line in a few minutes.
And she's going to be talking about relationships today. Is that right?
Yes.
And why is that important to business people?
Well, business is a matter of relationships. Business is a function of relationships. So everything in business is relationships. So it's we start young, very young in developing relationships, and you have relationships with your employees, you have relationships with your clients, you have relationships with your customers. It's really about how well you create those relationships and the dynamics of them that really creates the value of your business.
Right. Want to encourage people. We're still waiting for Michelle Joy, and we do apologize for the technical breakdown here. But while we're waiting, got a couple of things to remind our listeners. You can always look up our company on the web. Our website address is www.consultingtowin.com. That's consulting, the number 2, win.com. You can learn more about Ralph and me and our colleagues, Bonnie Landau and Mary Mullenhoff, on the website and all the things that we have going on. We have a blog that we update quite often, and it covers a variety of topics that are important to business owners and managers. You can find that at consultingtowin.blogspot.com. And I want to remind you about our contest is still going on. We are going to be giving away to a lucky winner a 2-session Healthy Business Checkup. What that is going to be is 2 45-minute phone calls with one of the consultants on staff, and we're going to work with you on your business. We're going to ask you a lot of questions about your business, and we're going to create what we call a healthy business checklist and go over that with you and help you find a new direction for where you want your business to go. How you enter that contest is pretty easy. You email me at Leann, that's Leeann, at consultingtowin.com, and tell me 3 ideas you have for managing time. We talk a lot about managing time. And we want you to come up with 3 ideas for how you can change how you're managing time in your business. I know I can hear that dial tone. I'm sure you can too. So bear with us here on Consulting to Win Radio. There we go. So again, we're running that contest through the end of August. All you have to do is email me 3 ideas for how you can change how you manage time in your business. We're looking over, we've had several entries so far. We're getting really excited about this. And we are hoping to be able to announce the winner. In fact, we will be announcing the winner in the first week of September. So that kind of brings you up to speed on what we've got going on at Consulting to Win. And we are still working on getting Michelle Joy Del Rey on the line. But I think we'll go ahead and start talking about relationships. Ralph has a lot of experience in this area. And I think it's unusual for people in business to consider relationships. We got started talking about this a minute ago. I think people tend to think of relationships as being outside of business.
Right.
But as you were saying, your relationships within your business are critical to the success and indeed the value of your business. If you are not adept at gathering and maintaining relationships, you're not going to have a business.
That's true. And you've got to look at how do you develop those relationships? How do you, what do you know about your customers? What do you, what effort have you made to find out information about them? I was reading a book by Harvey Mackay called Swim with the Sharks on sales. And he actually has a program. There we go.
I do believe that is Michelle Joy.
Hello, who's on the line?
Oh my gosh, I got through. The 3rd time must be the charm.
Oh,
right.
Welcome, Michelle Joy. Welcome.
There she is.
All right. Thank you so much for your perseverance. So,
You put me to the test, didn't you?
wasn't intentional, definitely. So I started introducing you as an ontological leadership coach, seminar leader, trainer, intuitive, author, and speaker. And I mentioned that we've worked together in the past for like 12 years on a large variety of projects. But why don't you say a little bit more about yourself and some of the things that you've done? Because when I look at the long list of credentials that you have, degree in psychology, spiritual practices, business management, banker, mother. I mean, you cover a wide spectrum of expertise.
Comes from living a long life. Thank you. So we actually were working together for 16 years.
Was it
and I know that time just flew by, but
wow.
We had an extraordinary opportunity to know each other professionally, personally, to be able to work together, to really have all of the underpinnings of relationship that we're talking about on this call today be experienced. And so we did in all the business consulting programs that we did, in all the programs that we led, in all of the love and relationship training programs that we did for individuals and families. So we actually experienced everything that we're talking about today.
That's definitely the full gamut of all of the different aspects of it. I mean, I learned the reason I asked you to be on the program today is when I looked at this quadrant in our whole life matrix, the first person that came to mind was you, and I just felt that, I wanted you to be the person we talked with when we were talking about that aspect of our whole life matrix. So,
well, thank you. I feel honored whenever I have any opportunity to work with you, Ralph.
Well, thank you. So, in looking at the relationships, what do you consider to be the essence of relationship?
The essence of relationship. Well, it actually I was thinking about that last night, and I looked up the dictionary definition of relationship, and it has a very simple definition. It says connection, a significant connection or similarity between two or more things, or the state of being related to something else. Well, to me that doesn't say a whole lot, but it does say connection. There's a connection of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went back to a couple of sources that are really important to me. I've been a student of Dr. Michael Beckwith, who is the author of Spiritual Liberation, Fulfilling Your Soul's Potential. And one of the things that he said in defining a relationship is that it's becoming free from the narrow confines of fear, doubt, worry, and lack, and living instead from a conscious awareness of one's authentic self, one's true nature of wholeness. So it's coming from one's authentic self. That's a radical thought, that you're whole and perfect just as you are, and so am I. A lot of the drama that people experience in relationships drops away when you live in an awareness of your wholeness. How can I blame you for my experience, and how can you gossip about others when you are no longer a victim? So, it shifts the dynamics completely about relationships. And I think that that's really the essence of relationship, is knowing that you are whole and complete and able just as you are. It doesn't mean that you're perfect in somebody's viewpoint, but it means that you are coming from a wholeness of being who you are individually, yourself, uniquely yourself. And then secondarily, there's another source that I just love. It's a book called Trusting You Are Loved. It was written by Lou Epstein, who passed away a few years ago, but I had an opportunity to meet him at a wedding, of all places, to experience the kind of love that he talks about. And he says that relationship is having a truly extraordinary experience of being profoundly honored, listened to, appreciated, loved, and safe with another human being. And I consider that the essence of a relationship.
Now, Michelle Joy, this is Leanne Farmer, by the way. How are you?
Hi, Leanne.
I really got a lot out of what you just said. And then the question that popped into my mind, because as you know, we're working with coaching businesses, is I think there's so often challenges to those concepts when you're in the workplace. If there's conflict, if there's crisis, something going on, how do you keep this authentic center and this essence that you talk about when you're dealing with difficult people?
Well, you asked about 3 questions.
I know, I'm sorry.
It's fine.
But
go ahead.
Oh, what we're trying to get at, I think, is translating this into a workplace environment. Let's say, how do I stay authentic when I'm having a relationship with my coworker who is so different from me?
Right. Well, there's no one on the planet that is like you.
Okay.
So it really doesn't matter if you're talking about business or if you're talking about your personal life. One of the problem areas that we get into in the area of relationship is thinking that people should be like us. And we kind of massage our thinking in the area of personal relationships, especially if we're married or we have a significant other, to think that the people that are around us are more like us. Mm-hmm. And so we relax ourselves and we think that that's what being in relationship is. The fact is, even those people are not like us. We start to have expectations of them when they don't show up looking like us, doing the things, saying the things, being a particular way that we think that they should be, and that's what causes conflict. So it really is across the board that being recognizing that you're unique and whole and complete is the essence of relationship, whether it's in your personal relationships or your business relationships. Now, how do you translate that to being expressing your authentic self? It really comes from being willing to be open and honest.
Okay.
And that means in the office, that might mean being able to say, I'm not comfortable with that, or let me understand this a little better because I don't understand it. Quite often what we do is we want to appear together, and so we don't have that vulnerability open to ask some of those questions, to be able to let people know that we need help, or we need to have more information, or we need to understand something more completely before we can step into it fully.
Right, right. And why is this so important in the office to make this work?
Well, the basis for business, as I heard Ralph say when I was on the phone line listening, is relationship.
Right.
It doesn't matter that it's a business relationship. We can term it in business terms, but it's still the basis of relationship. And no business is going to be successful without having relationships. We have relationships with the vendors. We have relationships with our coworkers. We have relationships with the boss. We have relationships with our clients. So, every single interaction is a relationship. And if you can begin to look at it as an opportunity for yourself personally to grow and to be able to be more authentic, to be more open and honest in your communications, then you can start to see where it is that you break down relationships, where relationships are difficult for you, and it's really about taking personal responsibility for how a relationship is going to go.
Sounds like you're talking about, real open, honest communication, not covering up how you really feel about something. That's a level of authenticity that I think a lot of people are not accustomed to in the workplace.
You're right.
That's a level of vulnerability, of that people would be uneasy with, until it become a practice in the business, until it was set up as a context in the company. I would think it's very powerful when it's created, when it's present. I mean, it's when you have that kind of open, honest communication of this works for me, this doesn't work for me, that you can have that level of honest communication where there's not a front being put up, where there's not gossip, where there's not an attempt to undermine each other, where people are being truthful about what's really going on. You're speaking about a level of relationship that would be very valuable for a business to have. I mean, a whole new level of workability in the workplace and in any relationship. I mean, you're speaking of a possibility that would be magnificent to achieve in a relationship. Could you say some more?
You're absolutely right, Ralph.
Yeah, could you say some more about that? Describe more about that possibility of what you see that's available.
Well, one of the areas that breaks down in business relationships is having communications that stop when people become resentful or distrustful or critical or angry, or feel unappreciated. And so people stop communicating. And it's at that point there that the relationship breaks down as well.
Mm-hmm.
And in being able to create an environment in which it's safe to communicate whatever you need to communicate, that open, honest communication that you're talking about,
mm-hmm.
it frees people to be able to work more effectively. They can actually be their authentic self that we were talking about. And in having that ability, then people show up more creative. They actually show up more effective, more productive. It takes, because we aren't really taught about how to communicate with each other in a way that's safe, and it takes a certain amount of training. Usually what's needed is to have somebody who's a coach or somebody who's a mentor to be able to learn how to do that effectively in the business world.
I've seen that many times, actually, and you remind me of when I had my fabrication company. I actually created an environment with my managers while we were in a management meeting that they could speak freely. They were totally entitled to disagree with me. I said that in this meeting, speak however you feel. If you disagree with me, you have total freedom to do that. Matter of fact, if you disagree with me and you don't speak freely, you're actually sabotaging the project. If you don't think it's going to be successful, if those are your thoughts, that's what you see, I want you to speak up. Once we make a decision, once we decide on something, outside of this room, I expect you to line up with it and deliver on it. But in this room, whatever your thoughts are, however you feel about it, I expect you to express that. But as a team, once we decide, we need to be aligned. But here is the place that you express it, and they become very vocal. They become, there were times that my management team would say the reason we didn't deliver, the numbers last month is because I didn't sell enough to make the numbers, and I was, and that was very difficult. Because it was true, and it pressed on my ego to, be sitting there having my staff holding me accountable for not making the numbers. And when first I started to get upset about it, but then I realized, it was in fact the truth. And I owned it, I acknowledged it, and I said I'd put in the correction, and I did. But it created a whole different level of communication. Instead of, I used to have a meeting with my managers, and everybody would sit there and agree. And then afterwards, I found that they would have their own meeting outside where they would all say, that isn't going to happen. They'd have the second meeting where they decided really what was going to happen, which without me there. So I told them, we don't need that second meeting. Let's have the second meeting right here. If you don't agree, talk about it here. Let's have open, honest communication.
That's so courageous of you, and I remember when that was going on, Ralph, and how incredibly it changed your company.
Mm-hmm.
It changed the dynamics. It actually had people who were in a worker position step up as leaders within your company, and I think that that's the challenge of these times, because we're changing so dramatically, so quickly, that the employees in a company really have to be empowered to be leaders within the company to be successful. And having that level of relatedness where it's safe to be able to say what needs to be said, what's an authentic expression at that moment, to be able to say it not in a hateful, critical way, but in an open format, like you provided a context for it, and you provided a safe listening for everyone who communicated in there. So being able to set up some rules of the way that you communicate, so to speak, being able to set that up allowed people to be to take advantage of that and to communicate what needed to be communicated, and to free themselves then of the burden of carrying it around with them and thinking it, but instead being able to move forward and start to have more results then.
Right. I want to remind our listeners, if you have questions for Michelle Joy or Ralph on this topic, give us a call. Our number is 310-715-6709, and we'd love to hear from you. Michelle Joy, we're talking about how, I think what we're getting at right here is how the boss or the person in charge can maybe create that context for better relationships through communication and connection. What are some other tips you could give someone who has a business who is struggling with this, with employees who are disgruntled or just not a happy workplace? What are some other tips you can give that person on how to create this kind of environment you're talking about?
Well, I'll give you an example of one of the clients that I'm coaching, and in her company, she has people that have very diverse backgrounds, diverse nationalities, diverse religious beliefs.
Uh-huh.
And so those are all grounds that could cause conflict just by the mere misunderstanding because of different cultures and different expressions. And so what she has done is she has just been very upfront and addressed it at the beginning of her meetings. She has staff meetings every week. And so she has created a context that their company is a global company, that it embraces people of all different faiths, of all different cultures, and that there are different ways to be able to acknowledge people. There are different ways that people understand things. So she put a culture, a global culture to her company, which opened up a whole different way to look at things. And then what she did was she began to have pair up different people in the company to take on different tasks, to cross-train in different jobs.
Okay.
And so by working together more closely, they got to know each other. And I think that familiarity, that understanding, that personal connection is something that really allows people to feel more free as well.
Well, that sounds like a great idea.
Definitely, and I highly support cross-training. I think that's an excellent way of developing a team, and I actually encourage people to set up a program of cross-training in their facilities, and when people are proficient at more than one job, I think there should be an incentive for doing that, and so that you have people that, you build a team of people that can move from one position to another, gives you more flexibility, gives you the ability to have people go on vacations and not have have somebody else that can fill in.
And you're having the benefit of they're having some empathy for this person that maybe
Definitely.
they didn't know them that well, or they didn't understand the challenges of the other person's job.
Right.
And that helps build some of the relationships we're talking about.
Totally. And they also see in the cross training of, oh, I see something I do in my job that that I wasn't paying much attention to that really affects what goes on in your job. I ought to pay a little more attention to this, because if I don't do that, it causes a big problem over here, because while I'm doing your job, I can see I'm dealing with things that I haven't been doing. So it really causes an awareness in the company. So
that's really true, and that awareness then goes on to expand into other areas as well, Ralph, because this company is known for putting together really clear proposals for new business, because they can make new distinctions that need to be addressed when they're working with other companies. There are some companies that they've worked with that expect that at the last minute they can make a lot of changes in the original work order, and instead they address it up front in their proposal. If they're going to be having changes, how many changes, at what point they can stop making changes, and where it's going to cost them more money. So they've made really very clear distinctions in their proposals based on this level of understanding.
Yeah, and real great ground rules for how you're going to work together.
Exactly.
That I love that. That's outstanding, because that eliminates all of that breakdowns in the communication, the upsets at the end of the contract where the customer wants something else and the vendor's saying, well, that wasn't in the scope of the work and that's going to cost more money, and the customer's saying, well, but it is in the scope of the work and I didn't know it at the beginning, but now I want it, and I'm not going to pay if I don't get it. And then the vendor's sitting there with expecting a big chunk of money, and there's always that upset, and I just that's very frustrating. So setting it up in the beginning, looking, I like a nice path laid out that says, this is what you get, and if you want to add something on, this is what it's going to cost. Laying out a map of how we're going to work together, and here's the options, and this is the cost of deviating from the path, and having everything clear up front is an excellent way to work.
Ralph, everything that you just mentioned as an upset is part of what goes into a relationship. Everything that we're talking about in terms of being able to have safe, clear relationships, clear listening for relationships and communication. All of that is what goes into having a successful relationship and creating a partner with a client. Allows you to have that kind of conversation so that you can clean up breakdowns that might happen in the timing of some business that should be completed by then. That you can clean it up and be able to still work with each other. So often people don't recognize that is a key component of being able to have a successful business. until you can have that level of conversation with your client when there are breakdowns, then you can't go back to have more business with them, or it's going to be a very strained relationship if you try to. And so the opportunity that I see for people is to learn along the way how to have the difficult conversations and to be able to have them when you're in the middle of it, not at the end afterwards, unless you have to clean something up. But along the way keeps things really easy, allows people to work together much more easily.
Interesting. You remind me of a client that I just signed up yesterday, and he's a therapist, and he owns a business, and he's setting up a center, and he was vague about what it would be like to work with me. So I'm talking with him, and I'm talking about his challenges, and one of his major challenges was in delegating, and I got very clear that he wasn't clear in what he wanted. So he had difficulty delegating, and I told him, I says, well, if you're not clear in what you want, how that's the problem in your delegation. How do you expect somebody to deliver something for you if you don't know what you want and you delegate it? How are they going to be able to deliver what you're asking for? And he said, well, how can I do that? And I said, well, you need to paint a picture. You need to, define what you want. I said, so are you more verbal or are you more visual? And he says, well, I'm more visual. And he says, but oftentimes I have to deal over the phone. I says, well, then verbally paint a picture over the phone. And he said, well, okay. He says, then let me use that immediately. He says, so paint me a picture of what it's going to be like working with you before I commit to doing that. And I said, okay. I says, thank you for taking the coaching. So I painted a picture, and he says, so am I going to get something in writing? And I said, no. And then I painted a picture of what each of the sessions were going to look like and how we were going to work together. And he says, well, it sounds like one of my therapy sessions, only we're going to be talking about business. And I said, well, I'm not a therapist, but I'm a coach, and I work with you in the area of business, and I'm going to give you business tools and to help your business be more effective and help you be more effective. And I'm going to focus on your productivity as a manager and improving that and improving your performance. So you have every right to expect your performance as a manager, as a business owner, to improve out of working with me. And if that doesn't occur, then you have every right to be upset. And he says, thank you. He says, now I'm clear about what the parameters are in working with you. And he says, and I'm also clear about how I can delegate in the future. So he says, I got value, and I'm going to be working with you. So but I can see that it was that clear communication that set up the relationship. It's like we're always training. We're always in every relationship we're always training each other. The question is, what are we training in? And it's so every conversation, I look at it as a training conversation. Are we training in something that's going to move the action forward? Are we training in something that's going to stop the action? And communication, and open communication, will move it forward.
It does, Ralph.
Yeah.
And the tagline that I have for my company is inspiring visionary leaders in a changing world. And how you relate to any person makes a difference in how they can communicate back to you, how effective they can be with you. And so by relating to every person, no matter what position they have within a company, from the owner on down to the janitor, of all, going through all of the employees, if you relate to them as a leader and having potential and leadership within their position, then they start to relate to themselves that way and start to take more initiative. So you asked earlier on, Leanne, about what happens if you're in conflict with someone within your company.
Right.
My thought was, what if you and the boss are in conflict?
That
which
would be
happens, one
one
of the most challenging positions.
Yeah, because it really puts you in a place where, I need this job. I can't I feel frozen a little bit and being able to tell him what I think, because if I make him upset, I'm going to lose my job. You know, there's a lot of fear attached to that situation, a lot of upset. How do you deal with that?
I hope this is a hypothetical.
Yes. Let me state for the record that Ralph White is about the best boss anybody could have, and we never, ever, ever, ever have any conflict at Possibilities.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Strictly hypothetical question.
Okay.
But we know that this occurs a lot in the workplace.
Okay, good.
That Ralph is unusual, and that in most places, this is a pretty common thing where you've got personalities that clash. So what do you do?
Well, sometimes, it's personalities that clash, maybe, but I really think if you look underneath of that you're going to find something else. And what you usually find is what people are telling themselves about the boss. And when they tell themselves things that are limiting them, when they are diminishing themselves, when they're talking about the boss, like the boss is mean to them and or is not treating them fairly, or is not listening to them, what they're really saying to themselves is, I'm a victim. The boss is the perpetrator, and I'm a victim.
Right.
And that's not empowering. It takes people completely out of an ability to be effective then in the communication with the boss. And so it's not until we come back to that place that I said at the very beginning of being whole, recognizing that who you are is whole and complete, just the way that you are. When you can come back to that place, then you have an opportunity to put in what I call the 6 steps of resolving a conflict. The first one is taking responsibility for your experience. So recognizing that, that you're not a victim, that somebody said something, did something, that something changed, but that you don't have to be a victim. It's just that's what happened. And now, what do you want to do about it? And then once you take that responsibility, then I think that there is a whole lot of emotions that come up about that, and a safe way to be able to have those emotions become more objective for you is to write them all down as if you were going to say whatever you were writing with no consequences at all. So this isn't something you're going to give the boss. This is just for you.
Okay.
But but I call it emptying out, because you write and you write and you write until you're really done. And I always liken it to being empty all the way down to your toes.
Okay.
So that everything that you would say if there were no consequences, you write down.
So that's everything you would say to your boss.
Right.
But you're not
going
to.
You don't minimize it. You don't.
Okay.
You don't be nice. If there's something to say, swear about it. You do that in writing so that you can get it outside of you.
Okay.
And because everything that you internalize, you're still hanging on to. So when the purpose is to bring it outside and be more objective with it. It doesn't mean you're going to do anything with it, give it to anyone. I would recommend you tear it up and flush it down the toilet or something. But it gives you the access to being more objective.
Okay.
And then the third point is to make a list of the positive qualities and experiences that you've had with your boss. Because in the heat of an upset, we forget about all those wonderful things that the boss did, or how we were acknowledged, or the opportunity to be able to have a job. There's a lot of people who are really grateful today and this time with having a job.
Absolutely.
And so being able to have a boss who has provided an environment where they could have a job, that alone might be something to be grateful for.
Okay.
And then the fourth point is decide what is most important to you, what it is that you want. It's actually what Ralph was talking about, getting really clear about what you want. So once you've discharged those emotions and you've recreated a relationship with the boss through being able to appreciate who they are, then you can get clear about what it is that you really want. And then the fifth point is ask for what you want without reference to your feelings about the past. That's one of the tricky ones.
Yeah.
You don't have to go in and explain yourself. You don't have to apologize for feeling upset. You don't have to say, I was upset, then now I'm not. You can just drop that away and then go in new and ask for what it is that you want. And then the last point is be willing to negotiate so that the outcome can be a win-win.
Okay. That's a great pardon me, I was jotting those down. Those were really good points, Michelle Joy. And I think a lot of times what I want you to talk a little bit also about your coach. Ralph's a coach. We're all coaches here. How having a relationship with your coach, especially if you are the boss, can help you learn how to do some of these things you were talking about. Sometimes you need that extra help, I think.
Well, absolutely. You know, as a coach, I've been a coach for 18 years now, so you know, I've had an opportunity to work with thousands of business owners and managers and executives. And every one of us, including myself, need a safe space to be able to have someone hear us that we know that aren't going to be judging us, and to be able to say whatever we need to say to get clear. You know, there are times when we have something come up that we just need to get clear. And in being able to have that person be there, it allows us to know that we can be returned to our powerful, clear, intelligent, brilliant self that we're meant to be.
Great.
And I'll give you an example of one of my clients that I was working with, and said 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 I was working with.